Hello and welcome to this episode of The Human Frequency. We are coming to you from the damp, moist mountains of snowy and rainy Southern California.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful holiday season already. We had a great Thanksgiving. It's the middle of Hanukkah and Christmas is coming right up. And this is a time of year where people eat a lot of delicious foods. And today we're actually going to talk about a diet-related illness that I suffered from and my recovery. I never really talked about this publicly, but the disease is celiac disease. It's very much in the media these days. People are afraid to eat grain, are cutting out wheat and gluten from their diets because of this illness. And this is the illness that is known as gluten intolerance a lot of the time. And it's something that I had a really hard time grappling with because just intuitively, I knew that wheat was a natural food I'd eaten my whole life. And I denied the whole gluten-free trend as being just complete dietary BS. But in actuality, a lot of people are getting very, very sick from eating grains, especially wheat. And I ended up being one of them. And I didn't realize this for a while. I didn't know what was making me sick. So after doing a lot of research and making changes in my life and trying everything I could think of, going to this specialist and that doctor, finally I figured out, it actually was the grain, but it's not what people think. So today I'm going to reveal the story of my celiac disease and recovery. It's not something I typically like to talk about publicly, which is why it's been a year since this all started, and now I'm 100% cured, and I never brought it up because I don't want to be judged for my diet. That's a huge problem.
Mm-hmm. But also, you had to make sure that it was 100% and that it wasn't going to be something that comes back just when you think you've solved the problem. So that was responsible, I think, of you to wait until you were certain.
Well, I have been recovered for over 2 months now. We're going on 3 months. I could say it's safe to say at this point that I have narrowed it down, figured out what was making me sick, and this may surprise a lot of you, but with this information, I hope that you can also recover from your symptoms of gluten intolerance and celiac disease and live a normal, healthy life again without having to worry constantly about every little thing you eat. Now, I do want to share that there were some predictions in the past that showed up in the Bible about the dietary trends and fads of today and people trying to figure out what we're supposed to eat and what we're not supposed to eat, when in actuality, God created everything for us to eat and everything he created is good, except for the unclean foods, which he specifically talks about in the Old Testament. That makes the laws of kashrut. So Jewish people stay kosher because of that. A lot of people don't keep kosher because they think the laws were overturned later. But that's not what I'm going to be talking about right now. I'm just going to be talking about the foreshadowing of false wisdom and false prophets regarding diet. And in Colossians 2:16, this chapter is the danger of false wisdom. And this is what it says. Therefore, do not let anyone pass judgment on you in matters of food or drink, or in respect to a festival or new moon or Shabbat. So do not pass judgment on people for what they eat and drink. That's important. And I know that when people are sending me emails about my health and their health, they're not trying to be judgmental, they're trying to help. But everybody has their own wacky ideas about what we're supposed to eat, and nobody knows what we're supposed to eat. In actuality, God created the foods for us on this earth. And there's just one other passage that I want Gabriel to read that also, I think, foreshadowed this pretty well.
Yeah, I'll read this. And I feel like I should just put this out there that we are not religious people at all.
No, but the Bible is the law.
Well, that's the thing. The Bible is not a religious book. It's a book of law. Mm-hmm. The word religion is only mentioned a couple of times throughout the whole thing. And you'd think that if it were a religious text, as some people purport it to be, that it would mention that word more than a couple of times.
Oh, and also if it's a historical text, which it is, I'm just bringing this up because these are a couple of predictions, I think, foreshadowings of things going on today that people came up with or were aware of a long time ago, that we will be receiving a lot of false information about what we should be eating or shouldn't be eating.
And of course, GMO foods weren't around in the time of the Bible. Neither were pesticides.
Yeah, or they would have been forbidden.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway, I will read this passage right now. This is from the 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 1 through 5. Now the Ruach, and Ruach is...
That's the Holy Spirit.
That's the Hebrew word for the Spirit. Clearly says that in later times, some will fall away from the faith, following deceitful spirits and teachings of demons, through the hypocrisy of false speakers, whose own conscience has been seared. They forbid people to marry. They command people to abstain from foods that God created for the faithful to share with thanksgiving, having come to know the truth. For everything created by God is good, and nothing is to be rejected if it is received with thanksgiving, for it is sanctified through the word of God and prayer. Now, I realize that a lot of Christians use that passage, amongst a couple of others, to justify eating pork and eating shellfish and stuff like that. But like you said, that doesn't overturn the law that was made before.
Right. And my point is about the false prophets, about telling us what we should and shouldn't eat. And it's funny because I thought maybe there's a biblical diet where the foods are just foods from the Bible. And I looked it up, and actually there is one. It's called the Bible diet. And a man named Jordan Rubin came up with it. But it's pretty much just the laws of the Bible. And he claims to have cured his Crohn's disease with this diet. So with that said, I do want to talk about my recovery from a horrible digestive ailment, and it goes back about a year, and it's going to be a long story, so I hope you enjoy my story and can apply it to your life, because I feel like I'm speaking to a lot of people right now who have digestive related issues, and it's something that can be cured as long as we know what's causing it.
So grab yourself a 12-pack
Yeah.
and enjoy the story.
Go get yourself some gluten-free pizza and a vegan gluten-free pizza and enjoy the show. Well, this all started back in 2017, and this was in the fall, and I started to get very sick, and I thought that it was stress-related and travel-related. And we had been having a lot of terrible harassment and noise issues at our house. So I really thought that my illness was 100% stress-related. And in fact, one of the incorrect diagnoses that I received from my doctor was that I was just too stressed out. So why was my digestion going so badly? Well, we went on a trip back east to Pittsburgh to see Gabriel's family and to Maryland back in late October of 2017. And during the course of that trip, I ate a lot of crap. I mean, I must admit, it's very hard to get healthy food in the East Coast, especially with Gabriel's parents along, and they don't want to go anywhere healthy, that's for sure.
Which I take no responsibility for, by the way.
So I was in a kind of an unhealthy situation, staying in hotels with lots of EMF. That's something I'm not used to. I got completely manhandled and abused by the TSA because I won't go through the body scanner, and pulled aside and told that there were explosives on my clothes. I'm not making this up. They literally told me they found explosive material on me. So it was a really horrible experience, and I was super stressed. All the food we ate was very junky, and we were trying our best to find vegetarian food that we could eat in these places, or at least just fish, but it was just difficult. And what ended up happening is I ate a whole lot of non-organic food. So when we came back from this trip, I wasn't feeling great. And around the time of Thanksgiving and just after Thanksgiving, I started to have digestive issues that I'd never really experienced before. I was getting really backed up. I don't like talking about this, but I'll just tell you that I was having a hard time going to the bathroom, which for me is very unusual. Normally, I'm just eating healthy food and I'm just going. And of course, I attributed it to all that junk I ate on the East Coast. And so by early December, it was getting pretty bad. I was having just terrible issues with my digestion. So I went to my colonic place, which is a closed system colonic, which I was doing in LA. And I did back-to-back, 2 days of back-to-back colonics to try to clear it, and nothing came out. That was a sign that something was going wrong, because I've never had colon hydrotherapy and never had something, didn't have something come out.
And also, that was getting into the time where enough time had passed since the trip that we thought, okay, anything we ate when we were back east has gone through our system by now, but the problem is still happening. What's going on here?
And so throughout December, it was bad because I couldn't go to the bathroom like I normally do. But then it got way, way worse. By the end of the month and by early January, I was having colon spasms, and I was finding myself having to run to the bathroom every 10 minutes, starting usually in the afternoon and going through the rest of the day. I would wake up in the morning, be a little better, but then by afternoon, again, the same problem. And I'd find myself feeling like I had to go to the bathroom, running to the bathroom, trying to go, and nothing coming out except, well, blood. That was very frightening. And a sort of a mucousy substance, and that also was frightening. So I was starting to realize that this was pretty serious. And during this time, we had gone into Ventura County. It was early January, and we were doing a gifting trip. So we were in Ventura County gridding Ventura, Oxnard, and Camarillo to help them recover from the fire damage, and also to replace organites that we had put out there. They got burnt up. And during the course of that trip, I was extremely ill. We kept having to pull over. I'd have to run into a Starbucks bathroom to go, and then nothing would happen, or, just something little would come out and more blood and more unsavory fluids. So it was very, very difficult to do the gifting. After the trip, we came home and I actually started to recover. See, during that time, I had taken, I thought that maybe I had an infection. And I also thought that since in the past MMS, which is Miracle Mineral Supplement, otherwise known as chlorine dioxide solution, that had helped me to clear out toxins from the body. So I had used it a little bit to try to clear it out. And that substance can cause diarrhea. So I thought possibly that was causing my issue. I still didn't know. So I had been trying to clean out detox, which was obviously not the problem. That wasn't what was going on with me. And just having to run to the bathroom constantly. So we came back. I stopped taking the MMS because it was just, I thought that was causing me to have to run to the bathroom. And then I started to recover, and I started to actually get better, and the symptoms subsided. And I thought, okay, I guess I got out of this one. I don't know what it was, but I'm better now. Then in mid to late January, we went on another trip up to the Bay Area to heal the Santa Rosa fire damage and to distribute organite up there in Santa Rosa and also in San Francisco, Berkeley, and Oakland. And my symptoms returned again. We were staying with Gabriel's parents, again, the healthy eaters.
We're gluttons for punishment.
Right? So, and gluttons for unhealthy food, I guess. So we stayed there and I got sick again. All the symptoms came back. I started running to the bathroom every few minutes again. So something was causing it, and I attributed it to travel. And, I hadn't brought it up with anyone yet, but any time I would bring this up during the year of going through this problem, people would sometimes say stuff like, maybe you're allergic to gluten. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I've been eating gluten my entire life. Well, it does have to do with the grain, but I haven't got there yet because I hadn't discovered yet what was going on. So we came home, and in February, the symptoms went away again. We were at our house for the full month, and the noise nuisance in the neighborhood also abated for 1 month. So again, I thought, oh, stress related, I guess. The noise went away. We're home, not traveling. I'm relaxing. The symptoms went away. So as you can see, it's already hard for me to pinpoint the symptoms because there are so many factors going on. And that's a trouble with figuring out what's wrong with you sometimes, is it's hard to figure out which of the many lame things going on in your life are causing your illness, whether it's stress, diet. I mean, to me, diet seemed unlikely because we eat so well. But I acknowledged that on the trips I wasn't eating organic.
Well, yeah, there's so many variables, but yeah, not eating organic food is one of them. And another thing that I should mention at this point is that you and I both had keyword shutdown.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Because we both knew intuitively what the truth was about gluten, and no, we can eat these grains. Humans have been eating these grains for thousands of years. They're biblical grains, for crying out loud. But again, we had not taken into account that these were inorganic, conventionally grown grains, and that factors into your story very much.
Mm-hmm. And I was also having back problems after we stayed with Gabriel's family. My back went out from staying on that bed, and so I was dealing with a back pain like I never had before. And so that was kind of a distraction from the intestinal problems. And I started to think that maybe the back pain was related to the intestines, and we couldn't figure that one out either. I had the chiropractor, which I will never go to a chiropractor again, who moved the pain from one place to another and made me worse, said, oh, maybe you have a kidney or bladder infection. So, that of course freaked me out a little bit.
Thanks. That's exactly
that's what I
wanted
need to hear. But we did actually end up ruling that one out too through blood tests and urine tests. So that I hadn't done that yet at that time. But so in March I was sick again. All of a sudden, sick again. And I thought it was the stress. And
that's when the noise returned.
The noise returned. I went to the doctor, and the doctor couldn't diagnose my back. I barely got into it with him about the digestion because I was so focused on the back problem, and told me that I was too stressed out. That kept coming up. You're too stressed out. So after that whole spring passed, I was sick the entire time, running to the bathroom every 10 minutes. This went on for months and months and months. I just started to take it as a given. We would go shopping for groceries, and by afternoon, after eating my lunch, we'd eat lunch at Whole Foods and then go buy groceries. And I would get sick every time. And we could barely get through our errands because of it. And in May, that noise nuisance in the neighborhood completely went away. And I went for some more colonics at an open system place in Santa Clarita, which I liked so much better than the place in LA. And after getting those colonics, I actually felt better, a little better. We were at home more. I was eating more of our own food. I was still sick, but not as sick. And the colonics did make me feel better. So I thought, okay, maybe I'm on the mend now. But then, sure enough, June, July, August, that whole summer, we were on the road again. We went to San Diego. I was sick the whole time. We gifted the entire city of San Diego with a complete grid. We came back, and we went to the Northwest in July. And we did a huge gifting of about 500 tower busters up there in the Seattle and Puget Sound area, Eastern Washington, a little bit, mostly Eastern Oregon. We were just driving through along the Columbia River there, and so many places. We were just out there for such a long period of time.
Lots and lots of traveling, sustained, and you do one month, and then the next month you're right back at it again. And then in August we were not planning on doing a gifting, but our favorite artist Steve Roach was performing out in Santa Fe, so we went out there.
And of course, we gifted the whole way and had to eat food out there again. So in July, I was sick as a dog again. We were up north doing the gifting, and I started taking the MMS again, thinking, well, it helped clear me out before. Maybe I have an infection. I mean, I'm still bleeding out of my intestines and still passing mucus instead of normal, bowel movements. And when I would have a bowel movement, it would be like little pieces instead of like a normal BM, which normally for me, it's just like I eat, I go to the bathroom every day, no problem. So I knew that it was still all screwed up. And I was taking the MMS to try to cure it in case I had an infection, and I wasn't getting any better. So just still the same problem. In August, the same problem. And I went to the doctor to tell him about this intestinal problem because I hadn't focused on it before. My back was better now. So I said, I got to get this dealt with already. He did not know what was going on with me. So there was yet another misdiagnosis, which I think people with dietary issues have misdiagnosis all the time. He diagnosed me with irritable bowel syndrome, told me I was too stressed out, and provided me, and of course I was stressed out, by the way. I had been sick since November and extremely sick since January. I was definitely stressed out. And he prescribed for me a medication called Creon and then another antacid called Prevacid. And antacid was not the problem. I didn't have a stomach ache. In fact, nothing hurt me inside. I was just having these spasms and constantly running to the bathroom. He prescribed the Creon, which it turns out is totally against our dietary laws. It contains pig enzymes, and this is for people who have a pancreatic dysfunction where their bodies aren't producing the enzymes needed for digestion. So he gave me this Creon. I took it anyway, even though it's against the dietary laws of kashrut.
Yeah, but you were desperate at this time.
And I was desperate. So. I never eat pig in my life, but I took the pills, and they didn't make me better. I took one with each meal, the pig enzymes, because it's supposed to help me digest my food, because now for some reason my body isn't producing enzymes, which was BS. That was not the problem. My body was producing enzymes. When I found out what the creon was, I was actually upset because I was confused why the doctor would give me this. And I was further upset because I went to the pharmacy to fill the prescription. The doctor had given me 2 weeks free supply. And they came up to me at the couch and said, this is what it's going to cost. They didn't even want to say it out loud. And they showed me a piece of paper that said $876. And that's just for a month. So I was pretty desperate. And I called Gabe and I said, I don't know what to do. I don't even have that in my checking account at the moment. How am I going to get these pills? What am I going to do to get better? And Gabe said, you don't need them.
I just knew. I just knew that this is, and again, this is going on for months and months at this time. But I knew that this was not going to be. This is not where it's at.
So I asked the pharmacist about it. I said, so what's the deal with this pill? I mean, why is it so expensive? Is this a mistake? And he said, enzymes are just expensive. And I said, I was diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. What do I need enzymes for? Are my pancreas not making enzymes? I mean, why did the doctor prescribe this? And he says, oh, as you get older, sometimes your body stops making enzymes. And I thought, okay, this is just ridiculous. I'm not an unhealthy woman. I take great care of myself. I eat right. I exercise. Why would my pancreas stop making enzymes? Something is fishy here.
It's going on strike.
Yeah, it just wasn't good. So I also agreed with Gabe. I was pretty stressed, but I agreed that if the pill costs almost $900 a month to take and it's not even making me feel better, then why would I do it? It was like adding poison on top of sludge. I felt horrible inside. So while I was in Santa Fe in August, we went and I went to the Whole Foods and just picked up some probiotics. And, this was a recommendation of the colon hydrotherapist in Santa Clarita, which, by the way, Optimum Health, great clinic for colon hydrotherapy. If you're in Southern California and looking for a place that's discreet and comfortable and does a terrific job and educates you too. But yeah, she suggested the probiotics. So I took it, and this is the Ultimate Flora 50 billion microorganisms probiotic. And I started taking it in the morning and at night. And you know what? I started to feel some relief. I was still sick, but I started to feel some relief. But we were still eating out in restaurants because we were on the road. So I couldn't get well 100% until we came home. I was still running to the bathroom, a ton of times per day. So that was one of the things I tried. I was starting to get a little better, but not 100%. And what ended up happening that finally just snapped me to attention was a couple of events, food related, that happened in August and then again in September. So that's what really snapped me to attention. But I just want to add one more supplement I took besides the Ultimate Flora, which is good to take anyway, was aloe vera gel. While we were in Santa Fe, we met up with a couple of friends who suggested aloe vera gel for relieving the intestinal stress. And I will recommend that. It does feel very soothing if you take that food grade aloe vera gel that you can get at the health food store. You could take it a half hour before a meal. So that was one thing I did, but ultimately it's not what cured me. In August, I went for another colonic, still wasn't 100%. And then after that, one of the worst bouts of this illness happened where I thought I was going to die. We went down to Torrance and visited Gabe's relatives, and they had all kinds of food out.
What is it with my Fakakta family? I don't.
Well, they just don't understand health.
It's like every time
They
we
don't
go and
understand
see my
health.
family.
But hey, it was Gabe's family that was one of the events that finally snapped me to awareness and helped me to overcome my keyword shutdown about gluten, by the way, and grain being the possible cause of this problem. So we went down to Torrance, and there were all kinds of foods there, and there wasn't much I could eat. So I was kind of looking over to see, okay, I need vegetarian food. And they were all doing, like carnitas and all kinds of Mexican food.
Well, we were focused on trying to avoid GMOs more than anything.
And meat for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm very, very careful about any animal products that I consume. That the meat has to be organic. And I don't go past chicken or poultry. I don't eat mammals. I just can't do it. They're too good of friends. But anyway, so I looked at the table and I thought, okay, pita chips and hummus. I can eat that. That's vegan and it's healthy, right? So I ate a whole bunch of pita chips. And I also drank a whole bunch of sangria. And I thought that, maybe I'm taking a risk drinking the alcohol because of my stomach issue, but I drank it because it was kind of light on the alcohol, kind of mild. I avoided salsa. I used very little salsa. I made myself a little burrito with a flour tortilla and some vegetarian ingredients. When we were driving home that day, I started to get very, very sick, and we had to pick up groceries on the way home. And I was so sick that I pretty much had a nervous breakdown at Sprouts. I started crying. I started feeling horrible. I couldn't finish my shopping. A very mean employee tried to kick me out of the supplement section because they were about to close the store and acted like I didn't even have time to find my aloe vera gel. So I just started crying. I was so sick. And that's the worst I'd felt in months. And I thought, this is not getting any better. It's only getting worse. What could this be? So we somehow made it through our shopping, made it home. And I was extremely ill, and the next day I was sick, and then I started to get better again. But not 100%, but better. It had something to do with the travel. I attributed it to the sangria, or, I thought it must be the alcohol.
It was incredibly weak sangria.
It was incredibly weak.
And I would know.
So it wasn't really that, but that's what I thought. Maybe that's what it was. The last straw happened in September. I had pizza at Mike's Pizza up here in the mountains, and I'd been eating there occasionally. We don't eat it that often because it's not good for you. I went and got some pizza with Gabe, and usually I eat it. It's no problem. I don't indulge. I don't overindulge. It's maybe a once a month treat. After that pizza, I was as violently ill as I was after Torrance, and then I said, maybe it is the gluten. Maybe it is the flour. And people keep telling me it's the flour. Maybe it is.
But it tasted different than before. That's the thing. We had gone to Mike's Pizza. By the way, this is not the same Mike's Pizza that was in the San Fernando Valley in the 80s and early 90s. For all you fellow Valley people out there. This was a different place. And we had eaten there, like you said, once a month, maybe once every couple of months. Not very often, but
for like 2.5 years.
But often enough where we could taste that this last time we ate there, something was different.
Something was different, and it made me very, very sick. So I started to think about it a little bit, and I thought, well, could it be the gluten? Could it be the flour? So I said to Gabe, all right, I'm going to get over my keyword shutdown about gluten. People are getting very sick all the time. There are a lot of gluten-free people. It turns out, really only 1 in about 300 has the gluten intolerance or the wheat allergy. But there are a lot of people who have intolerance issues that aren't considered gluten intolerance, but somehow related to it. Like they're not necessarily allergic to it, but it's still an intolerance to eating it for some reason, which is way more than 1 in 300. That's a lot of people. I mean, you see gluten-free stuff everywhere. Obviously, people are negatively affected, and it's not complete BS, because otherwise, why would people not be able to eat it, right?
Exactly. But you figured out what that connection was.
Well, yeah, and we kind of figured it out together because I had...
Drum roll, please.
Good, very good, Gabe.
I can't do it. I was hoping you knew how to do it.
Well, there have been reports on glyphosate, the Roundup pesticide, actually being responsible for the symptoms known as celiac disease or gluten intolerance. And a doctor named Stephanie Seneff has done studies on this and it's put out remarkable information. And you could actually check out a good interview with her with Dr. Mercola if you just look that up on YouTube. We can put a link to it below in the description. Dr. Mercola starts out the interview. He always is confusing things, whether on purpose or by accident or for sensationalism. But he said, could GMO foods be causing your celiac disease or the gluten intolerance? And Dr. Seneff corrects him and says, actually, it's not the GMO that's doing it. It's the glyphosate, Roundup pesticide.
Right.
So
because wheat is not a GMO product.
Right. And I had already heard of these studies before, and we've talked about it a little on our show, but we talked about it in an impersonal way because it hadn't happened to me. But now I was very, very sick and finally acknowledging maybe I should cut out the gluten and see what'll happen. And then instead of cutting out the gluten, we talked about it and we said, well, let's try this first. Let's not cut the gluten out. Let's cut out all non-organic, conventionally grown grains completely. Have no tolerance for these grains. So
every kind, wheat, millet, barley, you name it.
You name it. If it's conventionally grown, I won't eat it. In general, we only eat organic food anyway, but when we're traveling or just out for errands, that's not always an option. So out in the world, I stopped the grain completely. I do not touch any grain products eating out. And at home, we were only using organic grains, including wheat, including products that contain gluten. But we wouldn't bring anything into the house that had any pesticides in it. And to my delight, cutting out all the conventionally grown grain completely cured me. Completely. And all the supplements I was taking, and by the way, there was another one I forgot to mention. I do want to mention the third supplement because I took the probiotic, the aloe vera gel. The third supplement was there is a natural enzyme that's vegetarian that replaces the creon. You don't need to take pig enzymes. If you need an enzyme to have with every meal 3 times a day, it's called Enzyme Medica, and you can get it at the health food store or Sprouts. So just to add that, for about $50, you can get that instead of paying $876. And it's the same thing with no prescription needed. You don't need to go to the doctor. That is if you need an enzyme. Turns out I didn't. As soon as I cut out all conventionally grown grains, I was 100% healed. I mean, almost overnight. It was remarkable. It was like night and day. I had been sick, running to the bathroom like 20 times a day and expelling blood and mucus for months and months and months. 10 months total of being extremely sick. And within a couple of days, I was 100%. I had normal bowel movements again, one solid piece, on my regular schedule. All the blood went away. All the mucus went away like that. And so the end of the story is I cured myself. So I had all the symptoms of celiac disease. It's the closest thing I could think of to what I had because the doctor had no idea. Nobody could tell me what was wrong with me. And I figured it out by listening to Dr. Seneff and cutting out the conventionally grown grain. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm. And also overcoming that keyword shutdown because you saw a word like probiotics and you were saying kimchi, sauerkraut.
Yeah, I shut down on
I don't
that.
want to eat that stuff. It's terrible.
I had keyword shutdown over primarily gluten is a keyword shutdown for me, but probiotic has been too because people are always telling me eat all this foul stuff that there's no way I'm going to eat it. I'm sorry, I hate pickled foods, except pickled herring, but that's just because I grew up Jewish. But really, pickled foods to me are not appealing. So I don't eat any pickled foods. I don't eat pickled herring either, by the way. I don't eat any of that stuff.
You don't eat kosher dill pickles like I do.
I don't like them.
Well, I grew up Jewish too, and I like it.
I know, but really the pickled foods don't do it for me. So people would say, oh, eat this and that for probiotics. And I just didn't want to hear about it. But this pill, the Ultimate Flora pill, they're very expensive. They're about $1 a pill, but they are very good for you. Turns out I probably don't even need them. I'm still taking those. I'm using up my aloe vera because I bought a gallon of it, so it's now taking me a while to get through it. The enzymes I quit taking, I don't need them, and everything is working. And the reason I wanted to do this episode today is because a lot of people are having gluten intolerant symptoms, are unable to eat the wheat products that they enjoy, and have basically had to turn their lives upside down over a food allergy. And now, I'm not saying that this is for everyone, because if you are actually allergic to wheat or gluten for real, then this won't help you. But if you're not actually allergic to wheat or gluten, or ate those things your whole life without ever a problem until a few years ago, then you may want to consider that it is the pesticide, the glyphosate pesticide in the grain. And use of this pesticide, by the way, has skyrocketed since 2008.
Yeah.
And when you look at this interview with Mercola and Dr. Seneff, you'll she'll go over that stuff so you could see what's happened, but it has skyrocketed. And this is when the gluten intolerance started. And it's just important to know that it may not be the gluten. I mean, this is a natural food. Wheat is natural. It's good for you. Gluten has health benefits. And it's just the corruption of this crop that has caused these problems. So if you try, if you're brave and you feel comfortable trying it, you might want to try eating it only organic. And I can understand if you're just completely scared to try grain anymore because of this. But the fact is that I only cut out the non-organic stuff and I cured 100%.
Well, it kind of makes sense that Monsanto would make gluten the boogeyman so that people focus on that and don't focus on the pesticide. It's actually an herbicide, by the way.
That's true.
I know that the people are probably thinking, why would they spray herbicide on a plant? Wouldn't it kill it? Yes, that's the idea, to kill the wheat crop so that it produces more seed at the end of its life and there's more yield
Right.
in a harvest.
Right.
Which is absolutely sick for reasons that ought to be obvious. But another thing I want to point out is that before this whole thing happened, we were making a point of eating mostly organic food. And grains were included on there. But I say mostly, meaning 80, 85, 90%. That is not good enough.
Not
it
good
has
enough.
to be a full 100%. And once we hit that 100%, you were cured.
Right. And so it would be something like at home, I'm eating all organic, but then we'd go and eat at Whole Foods and I'd eat a salad, but I'd also maybe have a samosa or something on the side. They have all kinds of yummy cooked foods there. I'll read every ingredient and make no exceptions anymore. At the time, I thought as long as it didn't have GMOs in it, I'd be fine. But that's not good enough. It's not good enough to just cut out the GMOs. You have to eat organic. And so now when I eat at Whole Foods, which is pretty much the only place I can eat outside of this house, I read every ingredient on every item. I mostly eat salad. I make myself an organic salad for lunch with all organic ingredients, with only some exceptions like olives, and I'll throw some olives on there. And then if I want hot foods, I have to be extremely diligent. I read those ingredients completely. And if there's one thing on there that is GMO or if it's a conventionally grown grain, I just move away. I just walk away.
It's a no-go.
Yep, and then that includes foods I really used to enjoy. I can't eat burritos anymore in restaurants. That's out. I can't even eat
But you can make them at home.
I do make them at home, and I even make my own tortillas from scratch, and they're unbelievably good. I can't eat a lot of my favorite Chinese food anymore, especially the stuff that was breaded. There's a huge list of stuff I can't eat anymore. It's completely negated any reason for me to even want to go into LA anymore, because my main reason for wanting to go into there is to eat good food, but you can't get good food.
Or going anywhere else for that matter.
Right. So we're staying home and we're making our own food. And when we go on gifting trips, we're cooking our own food. And that's just the way it is now. And I really do hope that by opening up with this information, it's hard to talk about health problems, especially gross ones like this. But I really do hope that by opening up about this, I help you to overcome your celiac disease and your gluten intolerance. And if indeed your intolerance is caused by the pesticide, I hope that I've allowed you a chance to improve your life and enjoy delicious foods that you thought you couldn't eat.
And also to not fall into the trap of dogmatic thinking when it comes to food, because I know you said earlier, everyone has their own peculiar ideas about what foods are right and what foods are wrong. And there's so much stuff out there on TV and the internet and social media. There's so many fad diets that are just not helping anyone. And in order to get past the problems that plague us, especially this one, which affects so many people, we need to rise above that and start looking at the real cause of problems. And glyphosate is definitely at the top of that list.
It absolutely isn't. It's a huge problem, or it wouldn't be so mainstream. You can go to Target and they have a gluten-free section in their grocery aisles. It's very, very common to find gluten-free products. Obviously, this is a huge problem for a lot of people, or it wouldn't be so mainstream. But you also have to understand that corporations like the major supermarket chains and Monsanto, who is behind so much of the food market, they have something at stake here too. And if you know that it's them, their chemical that's doing this, that changes everything. And that steers you away from so many products, including gluten-free junk food on the grocery shelves. A lot of that stuff is junk food and it's processed. And just because it doesn't have gluten does not mean it's organic and healthy. So let's get to the root of the problem. Let's understand that, yes, there is a conspiracy going on. Yes, I'm a conspiracy theorist. There is a gluten-free hoax going on, because for those people who actually are gluten intolerant or allergic to wheat, there are tons of us who are having the same symptoms who aren't allergic. So let's get real, let's eat organic, and let's improve our lives.
And gluten-free, by the way, is a $5 billion a year industry. So just keep that in mind for whatever it's worth.
And I suggest that everybody tries to eat as organic as possible, especially with grains. And I thank you very much for listening to my story. I hope it helps you. And we will be back again soon with another episode of The Human Frequency. Until then, please check out our website, thekembo.com, for information on our work, to learn about Organite and Orgone Energy, how to make your own. You can visit our shop and do your Christmas shopping there. And spread the joy of Orgone Energy. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you again very soon.